I'd like to welcome now our very first panel for today. Our panel is an incredibly interesting panel discussing the new dynamic that is emerging with the Israeli diaspora and its connection both to Israel and established Jewish communities. We've got an amazing panel with Gusti Yehoshua Braverman, who's the WZO executive and head of the Department of Organization and Connection with Israelis Abroad, Nirit, Eylon, who's a convener of United with Israel, and Annalee Attia from Northern Rivers Community Organizer. Can you please give them a warm welcome as they come up to the stage? So just to introduce our wonderful panel, Gusti, as I mentioned, heads up the Department for Israelis Abroad at the WZO. She's a lifelong activist, a real strong leader within the Israeli reform movement and global reform movement. But importantly, she's also an incredible woman and feminist and mother, and really a strong voice for Jewish women worldwide. And Gusti brings an incredible insight, having traveled to so many different Jewish communities around the world and worked with so many Israeli diaspora communities as well. So welcome, Gusti. Next we have Annalee Attia, who has traveled down from Northern Rivers, and Annalee is a mother and an activist. She's also the founder of PBB Media. And she's one of the leaders in the Northern Rivers community, which is an incredible community that has really flourished over the past few years. Both Israelis and Jews who've really been active and quite connected over the past year. And so welcome, Annalee. We've got finally Nirit Eylon, who's one of the conveners of United with Israel. She's also general manager at BSW Group. She's got an amazing, interesting background as an elite swimmer, as a coach, as an activist. And Nirit and her initiatives have raised over $5 million for Israel. She's delivered over 26 tons of essential goods for thousands of families in need. And she's been responsible for a lot of the incredible rallies that we saw up in the video just before. So welcome to Nirit. Now, I must mention that our Aliyah chairperson and former president of the Zionist Federation of Australia, Philip Chester, a wonderful man, was meant to be facilitating today's panel, but he had an unfortunate cycling incident. But he still made it to our conference on crutches. So that is the kind of commitment we expect from immediate past presidents. Broken hip or not, welcome, Philip. Thank you for coming. Gusti, you've had an incredibly intense year where you've traveled to different Israeli communities, different Jewish communities around the world, and really speaking with them one-on-one, but also at scale about everything that has changed over the past year. And I'm just curious, when you think of that, what's evolved since the 7th of October with diaspora communities around the world?
First of all, I didn't leave Israel until late January. It was not even a thought that crossed my mind. Having 3 children in the army, it was not possible. What we did through Zoom. You saw one of the videos, but we kept, a flowing connection with the communities, Israelis abroad. It was very clear what was said here by what you showed, what was said here by Jeremy. The ground shook not only in Israel but everywhere. We felt the insecurity everywhere. It was from Australia till South America. United States, there were places that were really surprising to us to hear what is going on. People would change their behavior, the way that they took off any, the mezuzah, and not to mention Magen David, not speaking Hebrew. Even we initiated Zoom that wanted to actually ventilate their feelings and to give some tools. So one of the things that they were saying is the Israelis, basically, more than others, that there is a gap between how they felt. They were attached to the TV to listen to every piece of news coming from Israel, and their children, they just want to keep going with their own life. So there was almost a dichotomy between how one senses to the other and how to bridge those gaps. The insecurity, it was even, amusing in a way, because in Israel we have kitot konenut. I don't know how you translate this to English, like red. There is nothing in English because you don't need it. We need it until October 7. How? What? Whatever it is, you understand the idea is understandable. So since the sense of insecurity was so high, they were trying to duplicate something that works in Israel and cannot work here because you don't live not in a kibbutz, not in a moshav, and not elsewhere. So and another thing that struck me is the loneliness that was sounded by so many Israelis and others. One day you had the best friend, the other day they didn't even ask you how you feel. It was heartbreaking. And I heard it from students in the university. We heard it in the UK. We had a gathering that one of the girls, she was a single Jewish student, and she said she felt very lonely. Nobody even care asking her how you feel. So these were the most striking emotions that came to me during that time. And I will there is a lot to share, but I think that the differences that I could see is between Israelis and those that were born in different places. For Israelis, it was the first time that they felt both very scared about what is going back home, because it's home, no matter where you live, it's still, it is your home. And the rising anti-Semitism that they didn't have any tools to deal with. So this was a mega difference between those that were born and they know the sense of being a minority with what it takes, to Israelis that always were raised with a sense of we are the majority, we don't have to take care of this, we are the people of the world, and all of a sudden there was somebody else that remind them who they are. So this was the common, I would say, feedbacks that I got from the world.
Yeah, thanks, Gusti. And it really sounds familiar, because a lot of the Israelis we speak to here in Melbourne, and I consider myself to have one foot in each camp. It's the same thing. It was bizarre how quickly life around us went back to normal, and yet life internally can never go back to normal.
I can tell you about this. My first trip was to the UK. And I landed, and I was shocked. The world keep working as I remember it before my world was destroyed. So yes, this is the sense.
Yeah. Nirit, it's interesting because Melbourne's got this incredibly vibrant, thriving Israeli community, an incredibly thriving Jewish community, but historically they've kind of moved it in their own worlds, and they haven't necessarily had as much overlap. And in the past year, we've seen something quite remarkable. I'd love you to just tell us, what have you observed here over the past year?
Well, I immigrated to Australia nearly 20 years ago. And first when I came, yes, I was connected to my Israeli group. But business-wise, I kind of had to hide the fact that I'm true Israeli. I even changed my name. So those of you who knows me for my work and business, I'm Nikki. And it was working fantastic.
I only just connected the dots because I received emails from Nikki Eylon and I only just connected the dots.
Yes. I actually been in a conference with my co-founder. So I work in startups and technology. And maybe 8 years ago, we've been in a conference in Las Vegas and we're walking and speaking to people. And my co-founder and I, we know each other from childhood. And he said, you know what? You are not an Israeli anymore. You are an Aussie. And I said, for you, I'm an Aussie. For Aussies, I'm still an Israeli. And it was kind of a hybrid creature, right? And then came October 7th. And on October 8th, I found myself with 12 people, friends, at home, starting to organize stuff. From putting posters, so I'm sure you all know, in Melbourne, we put 10,000 posters across the city of hostages. And organizing media and social media and a billboard campaign. And in parallel, we, as you said, got direct link to Israel and we started hearing things. So, you know, personally, devastating enough. I know hostages' family. So one of my previous swimmers, her uncle and his wife were kidnapped, and it took 6 months until they found out that they were actually murdered on the 7th of October, and their bodies are still there. Obviously, her and her family are, you know, they've been family members for many, many years, and it is very personal. On the 20th of October, I was meant to be in Israel in a wedding of for a colleague, our product manager, one of our product managers at work. He was meant to get married. And on the 7th, 8th of October, almost our entire workforce in Israel been enlisted. And I had a really bad feeling. And I kept telling him, Omer, I want you to promise me that you're sending me an emoji every hour or two. I know you're busy. You don't need to send me anything else. Helped him get a vest, helmet, part of the fundraising and the stuff that we've done globally. And he sent me emojis. He was sent up north. Sadly enough, his partner was fighting in Be'eri and was killed on the night. And he never made it, and the wedding obviously never happened. So for us, that moment, that day, got us back to being kind of the bridge. Because we're, as he said, 1 foot here and 1 foot there. We have all the connection. Within few days, someone called me, and they said, okay, I need you to speak to this person. I said, okay. And the guy is calling me and he said, I've heard you're organizing stuff in Melbourne. I said, yes. Do you know any other cities in Australia? I said, yes, we work in Sydney, we work in Perth, we work in other cities around Australia and New Zealand as well. He said, great, you've just been nominated as the representative of Australia for the Hostages Families Forum. I said, okay. That's it. And since then, myself and my entire amazing team, we've been doing everything in our power to bring hostages and also help in any way to raise funds, goods, majority of you been part of the warehouse project that we've done, which was an unbelievable operation. You should have seen over 1,000 members of this community come on a daily basis to a warehouse that had been donated, sorting goods, packing them, sending them to the displaced communities in Israel. I think that moment, especially the warehouse, built a bridge that all of a sudden create a different connections between the Israeli community and the Jewish community. And by the way, not just the Jewish community, we get a lot of support from Christians as well, and the Iranians community as well, but mainly between us. And that moment for me was the moment where things started to change. And this year brought us together. This year, we are no longer the Israelis, we are one.
Thank you, Nirit. Annalee, in a sense, even though you represent the Northern Rivers community, you also represent smaller Jewish and Israeli communities all across Australia. We've got people in the room from the ACT, from South Australia, from Brisbane, from Perth. And often for us, as large Jewish communities in Melbourne or in Sydney, or even, as Israelis living in Israel, it's a different dynamic. I'm curious, when you think about the last year in the Northern Rivers community, a really special community that has come together and built new organizations, new institutions, Israelis, Jews together. What's it been like? Tell us the story of the Northern Rivers community.
Hi. Thanks so much, Alon, and hi, everyone. The Northern Rivers Jewish community is quite unique in that, and different from the larger communities, and as are many other of the smaller communities, as you mentioned. We've got a combination of, firstly, we don't have, before our association, the Northern Rivers Jewish Community Association, came along, which was last year really, we didn't have any major, there was no representative body organization in Northern New South Wales for Jewish people. Thank you. Can you hear me now? So before our organization came around, there was no organization that was a representative body for Jewish people in Northern New South Wales. Northern New South Wales is about 300,000 people. We are estimating that there's somewhere between 2,000 and 3,000 Jewish people in Northern New South Wales, probably a little bit more. But what we found is that October 7th, like everywhere else around the world, people started coming out of the woodworks, for us especially, where people had been living lives outside of Jewish community life and inside Jewish community life, because we've got the combination of a strong Israeli community in Northern New South Wales, as well as a really lovely, beautiful diaspora Jewish community that have lived there for a long time, but have also come from Sydney and Melbourne, from the larger communities, or visit there frequently, or their kids live there, or something like that. We've got a really kind of beautifully diverse Jewish community up there. And so, but what we found also, that were a lot of Jewish people who were living lives outside of Jewish community life, who suddenly were looking for their people, who had a really strong sense of their Jewish identity, even though before it was kind of not really a strong part of their life. And that was something that we found with quite a few people. And for them to have a place, for all of these different groups to have a place to be seen, to be heard, acknowledged, to be welcomed, was one of the key pathways of our work, of what we were doing. And slowly weaving that community together to feel like that they are a community. In terms of the impact, I really want to echo what Gusti and Nirit and you've said as well. As Israelis, specifically focusing on the Israeli community, and the differences between diaspora and Israeli communities. For Israelis, we've had the privilege and the burden of living on our ancestral homelands, speaking our ancestral language from birth throughout our schooling years, in our day-to-day life with our families, our parents, our friends and community, in our work life and beyond, speaking language, evolving our cultures within that context, so experiencing our Jewishness from that perspective. It's interwoven in that way within us. And that gives us both, you know, sometimes an uber privilege compared to Jewish communities that live in diaspora, where we feel almost like unaware of anti-Semitism, like you said. I remember in a meeting, one of our community meetings, a woman kept asking the whole meeting again and again, but I don't understand, an Israeli woman. She couldn't get the concept of why people were anti-Semitic. She just couldn't fully get, she knew about the history of anti-Semitism. She's she's a smart woman, but she just couldn't get it. She didn't understand why people would be in that way. And so for Israelis, you know, living here, some people have lived here longer, some people less longer, some people have kept insular with their Israeli communities, just like many, you know, diaspora communities and migrant communities. Like I studied in Brisbane when I was in my uni years, and the Greek community and I knew Greek grandparents who never learned English, and they'd been living for 50 years in Australia. They only knew a few words. So it's the nature of diaspora and migrant communities to kind of keep to themselves, except Israelis do have a tendency to, and Jewish people, to go out there and be part of everything else. So, but on the other hand, with the Jewish diaspora community, what we found, we've done a lot of work on weaving in those differences between the Israelis who naturally organize. You don't need to organize them. They just naturally organize. You just tell them where to be. Come here, do this, they'll come. However, they don't have really the concept and understanding, the deep understanding of the value of more organized organizing, like the Jewish diaspora community have had for decades, centuries, having to organize as a minority inside, you know, environments that are sometimes hostile. And, you know, there's so much value, so much rich information and knowledge there for us all actually to share with each other. I know. Just want to point out one more thing. I know for the Jewish diaspora community, what we've had a lot of feedback is there's this sense of seeing how resilient the Israelis can be in the face of anti-Semitism. It kind of sometimes goes off. They're like, what? I'm like, fuck off. Excuse me. On the other hand, you know, they're also naive sometimes. And so, yeah, a lot of learning there from both those communities for each other.
Yeah. It's interesting as you talk about language. One of the parts that I didn't quite appreciate, I would love so much about my job, is that for the first time in my career, I spend half my day speaking Hebrew. And I love it. I love it. Whether it's my meetings with Gusti late at night, or whether it's with the shlichim running around the building, whether it's with Nirit and Annalee and other Israelis who are coming through Bet Weitzman, it's so fulfilling to be able to speak Hebrew in Australia. And I feel like we're seeing more and more of that, which is fascinating as well. And I do want to point out that really, even though we're up on stage, there are so many wonderful Israelis out there doing incredible work, from Hadass and Gilly in Queensland to Haleli in Melbourne to, you know, we've got Yossi and Chagit and others in New South Wales to Rina in WA. There's just an incredible activity amongst Israelis all across Australia. And I think, you know, to tie it back to the motion earlier, part of broadening the Zionist tent is recognizing that groups like Habayit, United with Israel, you know, Northern Rivers communities, are organizations that are out there doing really meaningful, impactful work. And the concept of an Israeli diaspora is not new, but the concept of them being fully integrated into Jewish communities across Australia is relatively new, and we've got to evolve with that. And I'm curious, Gusti, I know you've got some fascinating statistics from around the world, but as you kind of think about Israelis abroad trying to both maintain their Israeli identity but also connect with current communities, just tell me a little bit about how that dynamic's evolved.
So this is the first time that we are presenting this study. It was especially meant for you, not really. But but definitely it was not presented yet formally, and you are the first one to see it. We handled actually one survey immediately after I was nominated as the chair for the new department. Until 2020, there was no department that was dealing especially with Israelis abroad. So this is new. And this is something that you cannot find in any other minister in Israel, in the government, I mean. So this was one, and we could understand about the needs of Israelis for language and what they are worried about and so on. After October 7, it was really essential to us to understand what is the mindset. So we did one after October 7, and now we did another one a year after to see the differences, if there are any. So instead of talking, let's see, we did it with the Hebrew University, this study. Yes, please. I don't have the... Uh-oh. This is when you rely on technology. Okay. לא, לפני, before, סליחה. Okay, you saw everything, thank you, and no. You'll see all the presentation of any... Okay. So anyway, what was important to us to see, to ask the question, that's it, thank you. What we really were concerned, and I'm saying this right after 2020, definitely after October 7, it's about the connections between the Jewish community and the Israeli community. So we can say that the connection to the Israeli community has grown from 66 to 74 to the Israeli community. Before that, though, Annalee, you were saying that Israelis are well organized, yes, and not that organized. Yeah. So we saw that 66% of them do tend to go to some kind of an Israeli community. Yeah. After October 7, the need just increased. So we see 74% that were looking for some kind of an Israeli community. It might be Nirit that they came to you and saw it as a community, or other communities. Definitely there was a need to be together. So the other question was about the connection between the Jewish community and the Israeli community. And here we see before October 7, 39% identified themselves as part of the Jewish community. So it's 1/3 about. We see that after October, it was about 49%. I don't see it here, 41, yeah, I remember this. So it was an increase. There was an increasing need and understanding, and probably it's what you expressed here, a need to be part of something bigger. We are all in the same boat, so let's make the best of it. So this is another thing that we realized from the study that we had. By the way, 1/3 of those that were answering were from Australia. It was so it was really interesting. And the other one would be, we asked them about what they are missing most. So what we see, they are missing most family. 83% miss their close family. As you were saying, you come here, you are by yourself, you need to create a new family. So this is something that actually resonates then with why they are looking for a community. It's something that will replace the close family. 80% miss friends. So you make new friends, but always there are friends that these are your real friends. No matter how much time it will take you till the next time that you meet, but you will start from the same point that you finished the last meeting. So still 80% miss their friends. Holidays, and this is another thing for you to consider, because over 70% they miss holidays and family. So the sense of loneliness during the Chagim is very significant here. Still, it's crazy, but 52% miss friends from the military. If you ask me, they are missing Miluim, the bonding with their friends. As crazy as it is, but we see it now in Israel. People are going over again to Miluim, to reserves, because they say, and I can tell you, my son did over 250 days of Miluim a year, because he cannot even think about his friends being on the border, and he will not be part of them. So missing, this is kind of bonding that I think that no one that didn't do this path with friends, when you are in the trenches together and you watch each other back, literally, this is a kind of friendship that...
Gusti, do you think there's guilt associated with being Israeli not in Israel at the moment during this time?
I'm sure. And one of the things that were really moving, that some of the took a plane and came back. They didn't wait for anything. And part of it, you probably saw them, they did something else in order to recuperate on the fact that they are not home. So these are the conclusion here, and I think this is the... the hostile environment, again, this is something increasing hostility since October 7. We can see that they feel this, it bothers them, it frightens them, because they don't know really what to do with it. I don't think that somebody that was born here really know how to deal with it. Definitely not Israelis, not armed, not in their homeland, in their own language. Sometimes we tend to forget that Israeli, even if they live abroad 30 years, not necessarily they hold the same, the language is not the same, the nuances. And we see it. It creates difficulties.
So just to interpret this, because I think they're very powerful numbers, only about 22% of Israelis feel positivity towards them from those around them around the world, and that's a decrease of about 50% in the past year.
Yeah.
And so it speaks to the fact that you can't really distinguish between Israel's image and the image of Israelis abroad. And I think by extension, also Jewish communities who are Zionists around the world feel that as well. So how does that manifest in terms of Israelis? Because for Jews, in many respects, you can tuck away your Magen David, you can take your kippah off. For an Israeli, it's in your accent, right? It's in your name. Often it's harder to disguise. How have you seen Israelis go about responding to that? And I'm curious, this is for the whole panel.
But this, the third one, it's really, really significant. I couldn't understand this until I met a group of Israelis here in Melbourne 2 days ago. 47% are not happy with the support of their local government. And this is something that I heard it in the United States and here. They feel that there is not enough response to the way that the local government is responding to anti-Semitic incidents or to discrimination or other facts. This I can say that I see a big difference between how the Israelis would think about to respond to this. They are more vocal. They want to fight it. And on the other side, the local Australians, they are more settled down and you have your own way. And there is a gap, and I could see it very clearly, the gap between the way that Israelis, and probably it's something in between, never this side or this side, but definitely the numbers are showing the they are not happy and they don't know what to do with it. I don't know if it's real or not. It's subjective, but this is the reality. 50% think that the local government betrayed them.
So in a moment, I'm going to open up to questions from the floor. But Nirit, I'm just curious in your response to what you just heard, because you've seen a lot of the Israeli community in Melbourne in particular get quite agitated and want to do more. And at the same time, that dynamic of not really being able to blend in Australia because there are distinguishing characteristics.
Yeah. I want to take a few things out of what you said in your question, Alon. I think, for us Israelis, we were taught as kids, okay? I was 9 years old when I saw a bus going up in the air. I missed that bus. I was meant to be on it. All my life, I was trained in the IDF, afterwards in uni, to run to someone in need, not from, okay? That's the first rule that you've been taught in Israel. Someone in need, you run to them, okay? I was on a business trip to the US and someone died on the airplane and the air stewardess is running and asking if there is a doctor, and it's the US. Dead silent. And I'm thinking to myself, what, I'm going to let him die? Of course not. I can't. So I raised my hands. I said, I'm not a doctor, but I can do a CPR. Got two strong men next to me to put him on the ground, did a CPR, and he survived. That's the Israelis, okay? We run to it. We see something, we see... That's how we act. We are not in particularly good diplomats. We are not very settled in words. It took me a long time in business, and again, putting my hat as Nikki, to learn how to express myself, okay? How to communicate, how to navigate around. And even though I'm here for a long time, 20 years, I'm still not articulate enough to fight anti-Semitism with words. Acts is a different thing. So when it started, I didn't feel hopeless, okay? Many of the Jewish community has, and they came and they expressed it. We act, we do. Doesn't mean that it's the right way, but that's who we are, okay? And yes, with time, it's very frustrating, but we also tachlis, and we say directly. Good, not good, that's who we are. We say it as it is. Again, I'm trying to learn how to articulate properly, but that's the honest truth.
Right. So I'm going to invite questions from the audience. So if you just want to pop your hand up if you've got a question, and it can be to either the panel as a whole or to someone in particular. Yes, Lexi.
I put the question to Gusti. Something that I've found both positive but concerning about the diaspora's reaction post-October 7 is the stark increase in engagement. For my demographic, identifying as a Zionist wasn't particularly popular post-October 7, but for many they've become more engaged, which is surprising. Is this sustainable? Is question number one. And question number two is, why does it take a crisis for the diaspora to be engaged?
Do we have a week? I don't know if it's sustainable. To be honest, I'm not taking this for a...
Gusti, do you want to make?
I think we have an opportunity. And the question would be what we are going to do with this opportunity. Because life is going on. At the end of the day, if we will not sit together, Israelis and the Jewish community, and think together, what brought us together? What values we found that we can take from this? and actually implement for the future, I don't think that it will work for long, to be honest. At the end of the day, it's exactly what was said here, and I know about myself. We think differently, it takes time, and we are talking here about women that are living here for 20, 30 and more years. They were trained here, they do businesses here, and still they felt that they have to do away, and still they are not there. The same has to be from the other side. It cannot be one-sided. What I was offering to the Jewish communities around the world, if you want be'emet, and I think that the Jewish community do need to have Israelis as part of them. I will say more than that. Those that were born in Israel is not of a concern to me, because they have the Jewish identity rooted in them. The children that are not Israelis, forget about it. They are Australians, they are whatever it is, and they go to public school. That is the first survey that we did. Most of the Israeli kids go to the public school. So no, and if Israeli, and we know, Israelis, they don't have to practice Judaism. There is no word in Hebrew to practice Judaism, because you are a Jew in Israel. You don't have to do anything. So you don't go to a shul, most of them, unless you decided, as I did, to take the journey into my Jewish identity. Then they don't do anything. Afilu lo kiddush. Listen how I moved to Hebrew. The basic thing that a Jewish family would do here, probably. So what I'm saying, my concern is about the next generation. The next generation of Israelis and Jewish kids, that we can say, I'm taking the risk to say, we have also a challenge with our own kids in the Jewish communities that shy away from any identification with Judaism. We don't see them in the shuls anymore, as we tend to do, and so on. So if you ask me, this was a waking call for everyone, Jewish community and Israeli community. At the end of the day, the question would be what we do with it. And if we are smart enough, is not to talk about, is to talk with. And if we will talk to each other, then we have a chance, as it was said, for a better future, because otherwise, be'emet, we are lost.
I want to add one thing. I think after October 7th, a trust been built between the two communities, a trust that wasn't there before. Before the Israelis, we were the vocal ones, the crazy ones. Okay, we don't know how to tackle that.
They were the vocal and the...
But since October 7th, yes, but it's okay. And there is a trust. There are many people in this room today that I've met this year. They've never met me before. But now they know me. And they know that if they need something and they need something to happen, they can contact me. While I was sitting at the back, someone texted me and said, my nephew's unit is getting into Gaza and we need to deliver sleeping bags to him. Can you help organize that? Yes, of course. That's what we are here for. We have all the connections. We have all the bridges. It's a trust that's been built. And now we need to magnify that. We need to build a relationship. And we need to acknowledge. I have 1 more minute. I want to tell you a story. 9 years ago, there was the first, going back to the business community, the first Bridge Conference. The Bridge Conference is a startup conference that is building a bridge between Israel and Australia. It was the first one, and on stage there were heaps of Israelis. Okay, they brought everyone to talk about the ecosystem and how magnificent Israel is and the startup nation is. Okay, it was the first time that Australia actually nominated an innovation minister. A young guy Yes, Roy. Really impressive. And he was sitting there all day long, nodding. And at the end of the day, he said a sentence. He said, "This was an unbelievable day, and I've learned so much. And Australia should embrace so much of what Israel has achieved and how it built a startup nation. But there are things that Israelis can learn from Aussies. We have some to offer as well." And I think this is the point that we are at now. The Jewish community, the Israeli community, it's time. We've managed to build a bridge. It's time that we realize that both sides has a lot to offer. And by working together, we can achieve so much more.
So I want to thank you, and maybe if each of you could just cast your mind into the future, and it's 10 years from now, and we're looking back at this year that has been, and as you've each kind of foreshadowed, we've made the best of some of the opportunities that came out of this tragedy, and as a result, Israelis and diaspora Jewish communities have been able to work more effectively together. What's different? What are we seeing happen? What are we seeing as the impact of that? How are we making sure that second generation Israelis are not fully Australian, but they actually are part of the Jewish community and the Israeli diaspora community and can hold those identities together and haven't been lost for good for the Jewish people? I'm curious. Paint the picture for us.
How many Israelis are in the room? And I will not define who is an Israeli. Okay. So first of all, I would like to see double. It doubled in 10 years when we sit here. Like it's 50-50. This is one. And the other thing we need, in 10 years, I would like to see more educated Jewish community. I think one of the things that we have learned, and Oad will give his presentation here, that is a lack of information about Israel. Facts on the ground for our children. We need to come up with we are talking about the startup nation, with an innovative program that will teach and will be able to change and to form a new way to create a notion about being a Jew, being an Israeli, and for sure to reclaim our Zionism, because we have given up on Zionism because we gave somebody else to tell us this, to be a Zionist is to be a racist. And it's about time to reclaim Zionism, the love for Israel, and definitely Judaism for our next generations.
I see a very flourishing and beautiful union between the two different groups in the coming years, especially in the next decade. I think that the work that we all need to do, all of us here in the room and all of us that have that responsibility as community leaders and community organizers, is to recognize and acknowledge the different groups that exist within each community, from the people that feel a strong connection but haven't got an evolved identity or understanding of their history, all the way through to those that are their lived experience is of that reality, and really honoring and preempting the spaces in which those people can meet, because saying that maybe there'd be 50% Israelis in this space, while it's great, I'd love to see more Israelis, absolutely. I think Israelis not always want to sit through a 3-hour meeting and like that. So they'd like
6 hours.
6-hour meeting like that. A space for Israelis to connect with other people would be more around like a gathering or where there's food and a bit of music and they can move around a bit and they're not kind of in their chairs. And so understanding and recognizing the different ways in which people engage with one another meaningfully, what's meaningful to them, and finding those common spaces between us, I think that's the work that we got to invest in.
So I want to tell you last thing. Through my work with the Hostages Forum, we are over 100 communities around the world, rallying and working day and night to return our hostages. And I want to tell you that there isn't a community like the Melbourne community. We are one of a kind. Globally, we've been recognized for what we've been doing as a community this entire year, not only with the donations, but with our rallies. And those of you who still don't know and didn't join us, every Sunday morning we stand together at 10 a.m., and that's why I was late this morning, rallying for the hostages and working together with people, knowing how to present it in a diplomatic way and working with people who are tachles. That's what makes this community so wonderful. So I hope that in 10 years' time, we will not need to define Israelis and Jews. We are just one community, one amazing community that helped to support and rebuild Israel to the magnificent country it is and used to be.
Asaf, I'm sorry, we're running behind time, but okay, 10 seconds.
10 seconds. I'm an adult that's still stuck in a youth movement. The solution, or one of the solutions, is the people that's sitting around this room with the youth movement. Once everybody comes together to the youth movements, and these people are the next leadership. They will be on the stage within 10 or 20 years' time, leading the Jewish community of Australia. If we bring all the kids into the youth movements and help them to gain leadership, to gain Zionism and Judaism in all the different ways, then we'll be in a much, much better place. And I think that's the interest of all this room, to make sure that the youth movements keep pushing forward, because they're doing an amazing things.
Thank you so much. I think, Asaf, that's spot on. The majority of the people in this room have in some way, shape or form come through the movement, and it's the reason why they're here and having the impact they're having across Australia and the world. By the way, I do see a lot of incredible Israelis across the room, from Ehud to Guy to Eyal to Asaf, Shoval, all around us. There are incredible Israelis doing amazing work. And I want to echo what all of you have said, to stop defining our community by where you were born and start defining it by the impact you're having. And in that respect, we're all in the same room for the same purpose. I want to thank our incredible panel. They're going to be with us for the rest of the day, so it's an opportunity to... it's an opportunity to continue some of the conversations, some of the curiosities that have been sparked by this panel.